We enter the videos with my new friend. The screen first states, I made a new friend, and then asks the viewer if you want to meet him. It cuts to a handheld footage of a room, and the bottom of the video says, he is in my closet, and can you see him? Then, an elongated face right behind the closet, staring right at the viewer. It is then said that he does not like being watched, but the main character opens the closet anyway. Only to see clothes and nothing else, as if the entity has just vanished. At another point in the video, the camcorder starts and aims at the closet again, only to see that the entity is out of the closet, standing still and staring at the viewer. In another video titled In Your Home, the video has a slightly different style. Instead of video footage, the content shows pictures and rather transitions between images. We appear to start in a bedroom. In the background, we can hear an unsettling groaning sound of what seems to be a person who is not visible, and the audio is genuinely terrifying. At the bottom of the screen, it says, check on Abby, and that's where the journey starts. We exit the room and enter another through a hallway. In one of the rooms, we see what seems to be a baby crib. The viewer looks inside, seeing nothing, but when the viewer looks away, something else appears in the dark doorway. This entity stands at the doorway, staring at the viewer. His face is elongated and his arms seem to reach the bottom of the door frame, but it seems to be different from the first entity that we saw. After a few seconds of standing, this is what happens next. The entity approaches us and the camera goes dark. A closer look at the entity reveals that it has at least 3 appendages coming out of its head or face. The scene cuts to a still shot of the same room with a different filter and a text at the bottom of the screen saying, "The doors were locked." In another video titled "The House with No Windows," the video starts off in a plain grassy field in the daytime. The protagonist finds a strange yellow abandoned house in the middle of the field. Another interesting feature about this house is that it has no windows or doors. After some time, the protagonist finds an entrance to the house, but it's through a crawl space that was hiding behind a wooden sheet. The person gets into the house, seeing that there are narrow hallways and very tall doors. He walks through the corridors, and then this happens. We catch a glimpse of the entity. It looks similar to the one in the first video with the closet. As we approach the end of the video gets slightly distorted, and we see the creature behind the wall again. In red text at the bottom, it says, "What are you?" And then, "I know your face." In the video, The Man in the Tower, we start off being at home again, but not for long. After some time passes, the protagonist realizes that their house is no longer their house. They keep walking, and then the entity appears again. The house starts to become filled with thin corridors. At some point, they stop walking because they see something at the end of the hallway, which then leads to this. The creature quickly approaches the protagonist, and that is enough to make us run up the stairs, terrified to look back. After a few minutes of trying to run away from the creature, the protagonist realizes that they are seeing things from their past. Like here, it says, "This is my old bedroom," and that nothing has changed. After hearing a loud sound, the protagonist quickly enters the closet to hide. But then, we see this. And that's where the series ends, for now. No matter what interpretation viewers follow, everything in this series ultimately circles back to one name, Abby. She is not always visible and she is rarely shown directly, but her presence is felt in every environment. Bedrooms, houses, and childhood symbols all seem orientated around her. Even when the story shifts focus, Abby remains its gravitational center. On the surface, Abby appears to be a child who encountered something unnatural and survived. She is associated with fear, absence, and memory. The empty crib, the childhood spaces, and the repeated sense that someone is missing all point back to her. If Abby survived, then what exactly was she escaping? And if she did not, why did she continue to appear, referenced and remembered, long after she should be gone? Viewers began to notice that Abby functions less like a traditional character and more like a fixed point in time. She is something remembered rather than something observed. The environments seem built around her absence, not her actions. Whether interpreted as a traumatized child, an imagined figure, or someone who never fully lived, Abby is not just part of the story. She is the story, and the houses, the warnings, and the entities all seem to exist in response to her, reacting to who she was or what she was supposed to become. Understanding Abby is the key to understanding why the horror in this series never resolves. The series is not moving forward. It is circling something that refuses to rest. As the series progresses, many viewers begin to question whether the threat in Obelisk is external at all. One of the most widely discussed interpretations reframes the entire story as a psychological one that is rooted in childhood trauma rather than physical danger. This theory suggests that the entities are not invaders, but creations. As a child, Abby is implied to have encountered fear at an age when fear had nowhere to go. Instead of processing it, she reshaped it. The monsters became companions. Imaginary friends formed from things that frightened her, made familiar through repetition and acceptance. Early imagery supports this idea. A closet is treated as if it contains something important, yet when it is finally checked, there is nothing there. The absence is telling. The fear existed, but only in her mind. Over time, these imagined things become persistent, returning not because they were real, but because they were never resolved. Later, when an entity claims it remembers her face, the line takes on a different meaning. It does not imply a creature with memory, but a memory itself refusing to fade. The monsters recognize Abby because they originated from her. They are fragments of a younger mind that never fully let go. As Abby grows older, the tone shifts. The entities no longer feel friendly or passive. They follow. They appear uninvited. This is not because they changed, but because Abby did. What once felt safe now feels invasive. The horror is no longer the imagination of a child, but the burden of an adult carrying unresolved fear forward. One of the most quietly disturbing symbols in the series is the caterpillar. It appears late, placed on a bed, observed rather than explained. On its own, it seems harmless, but in context, it becomes one of the clearest statements the story makes about change and resistance to it. The caterpillar is often interpreted as Abby herself, not as she is now, but as she once was. A child wrapped in fantasy, protected by imagination, and insulated from reality. The caterpillar has not yet transformed. It exists in a suspended state, waiting for something that may never come. When an entity observes that Abby has changed and is not how I remember you, the moment is striking. The voice does not sound angry, it sounds confused. The creature is not mourning Abby's pain, it is reacting to her growth. Abby is no longer the child who needed these imagined companions. She is trying to move forward. But the series suggests that growth is not clean. The monsters resist being left behind. They were created to endure. The caterpillar, still untransformed, represents that unfinished process, a past self that never fully became something else. And the presence watching it suggests that the imagination Abby once relied on does not want to be disregarded. In reading this, the horror is not about becoming something new. It is about what follows you when you try. One of the most devastating interpretations of the story reframes everything that came before it. In this reading, Abby is not a child who survived something terrible, but one who was never allowed to live at all. The horror is no longer about what entered the house, but about what never left it. Several images across the series take on new meaning under this lens. The empty crib is no longer evidence of an abduction. It becomes proof of absence. The space prepared for a child exists, but the child does not. There's no struggle, no interruption, only quiet vacancy. This absence is repeated in bedrooms, hallways, and domestic spaces that feel staged for life, yet remain unoccupied. The caterpillar imagery deepens this interpretation. A caterpillar is something unfinished, a form that exists only on its way to becoming something else. In this context, Abby is represented as potential rather than memory, a life that never reached childhood. When the caterpillar is shown in a cemetery, the symbolism becomes explicit. It is growth that was promised, but never fulfilled. Later, the series introduces one of the most unsettling moments: a person barricaded inside a bedroom, whispering, "Please forgive me." The scene does not resemble fear of an intruder. It feels inward, confessional. The plea suggests responsibility rather than victimhood. For many viewers, this moment anchors the theory that Abby's absence was not accidental. Whether interpreted as abortion or stillbirth, the emotional weight remains the same, which is grief compounded by guilt. The entities under this reading are no longer monsters in the traditional sense. They become manifestations of that guilt. One recurring pale-faced figure is interpreted as Abby's spirit itself. Not violent, not vengeful, just present, watching, and remembering. When it claims to remember a face, it is not threatening, it is reminding. A way of saying that what was lost cannot be erased. The title of the series takes on a final meaning here. An obelisk is a monument, a marker for the dead. In this interpretation, the entire series functions as a memorial, one built from distorted memories, analog decay, and spaces that should have been filled. The horror is not that something is hunting the family. The horror is something that was lost, and no one knows how to stop remembering it. Few images in the series are visually simple and as deeply unsettling as the yellow rooms. What appears warm at first, soft in color, almost comforting, but they are sealed. No windows, no sunlight. No exit that leads anywhere meaningful. The longer the viewer stays in these spaces, the more oppressive they become. In the context of the grief-based interpretation, these rooms are not houses at all. They are wombs. Yellow is traditionally associated with childhood, warmth, and joy. In the series, that association is inverted. The color remains, but the life it suggests never arrives. The rooms are spaces of expectation that have been cut off from completion, potential without fulfillment. The absence of windows is crucial here. Nothing enters, nothing leaves. Time does not move forward. This aligns with the idea of a child who never experienced the outside world, a life contained entirely within a closed space. The house becomes a body. The rooms become chambers of waiting. When the series places these rooms alongside language about change, about someone being different or not how I remember you, the symbolism sharpens. These spaces are not just places of loss, they are places of fixation, grief that refuses to open itself to the world again. In this interpretation, the maze-like quality of the home is not meant to confuse the body, but the mind. Grief loops. It revisits the same thoughts. It searches for exits that do not exist. The yellow rooms do not trap someone physically, they trap them emotionally. The horror here is quiet and deeply human. It is not about being hunted. It is about being unable to move on from a space that was meant to hold life and now only holds memory. As the series unfolds, one figure becomes impossible to ignore. It's tall, still, featureless. The pale-faced entity appears again and again, yet its behavior never aligns with that of a conventional monster. It doesn't attack, doesn't rush. It just observes, waits, and returns. Within the grief-centered interpretation, this figure is Abby. Not as a child and not as a body, but as a presence shaped by absence. The entity's lack of facial features is especially important. It suggests incompletion, a self that never formed an identity because it never had the chance to live long enough to develop one. The black, undefined body contrasts sharply with the pale face, reinforcing the idea of something only partially realized. This is where the name David becomes significant. David appears repeatedly across the series, not as a focal character, but as someone being addressed, someone remembered. Many viewers interpret David as Abby's father. Unlike Abby, David exists fully in the world. He has a past, a present, and guilt that follows him. When the entity claims to remember a face, the line reads less like a threat and more like an accusation. Memory in this context is not comfort, it is persistence. The entity's presence around David suggests confrontation without violence. It does not punish him, it just reminds him. The horror comes from being seen by something that should not exist, yet does. Something that embodies a choice, a loss, or a moment that cannot be undone. If the entity is Abby's spirit, then it is not seeking revenge, it is seeking recognition, to be acknowledged as something more than an empty crib or an unspoken memory. David is not being hunted. He is being followed by what he refuses to face directly. In this reading, the entity is not the antagonist, it is the consequence. One of the most unsettling aspects of the series is what never happens. Despite the constant sense of pursuit, no one is ever physically harmed. There are no attacks, no moments of release. The entities follow, appear, and disappear, but they never cross that final line. This restraint is deliberate. If the story were about literal monsters, then violence would be inevitable. But instead, this series chooses repetition over escalation. The same spaces are revisited, the same figures return, the same phrases echo. This behavior aligns not with predators, but with memory. In the trauma-based and grief-based interpretations that I mentioned, the chase is symbolic. Trauma does not kill you, grief does not strike you suddenly. They persist. They stay just close enough to be felt at all times. You can outrun neither, but they also do not need to destroy you to be effective. The entities chase because the characters move forward. Each attempt to progress, to grow up, to move on, to seal off the past, triggers their return. They are not activated by fear, but by avoidance. The more the characters try to live normally, the more the presence asserts itself. Violence would just end the story. Survival allows it to continue. In this sense, the pursuit is not meant to frighten the body, it is meant to exhaust the mind. The viewer is placed in the same position as the characters, always waiting for something terrible that never arrives, while the real damage accumulates quietly. The horror of Obelisk lies in this refusal to conclude. Nothing attacks because nothing needs to. What follows you long enough eventually becomes part of you. By the time the series reaches its final moments, for now, it becomes clear that Obelisk is not built to support a single explanation. Instead, it is designed to hold several at once, each one revealing a different kind of fear depending on how closely the viewer looks. On the surface level, the story functions as a familiar nightmare. Homes are entered, children are endangered, faceless figures linger in places meant to be safe. This layer is immediate and accessible, allowing the series to operate as a traditional analog horror experience. It unsettles through implication, degraded imagery, and the suggestion that something is fundamentally wrong with the world being shown. Beneath that layer, the story begins to fold inward. The repeated environments, the lack of physical violence, and the focus on memory rather than consequence all point towards something more internal. The monsters stop behaving like predators and start behaving like thoughts. Persistent, unavoidable, and deeply personal. Fear is no longer about survival, but about endurance. At its deepest level, the series becomes a meditation on loss. Whether that loss is interpreted as childhood innocence, mental instability, or unborn life, the same pattern emerges. The horror does not come from what appears on screen, but from what cannot be done. Empty spaces matter more than occupied ones. Silence carries more weight than noise. The past exerts pressure simply by existing. This is why the story never truly resolves. There is no final confrontation, no victory, no escape. Resolution would simply imply closure, and closure is precisely what the characters are denied. The series ends the way it exists, suspended between explanations, circling a wound that refuses to heal. Obelisk does not ask the viewer to decide which interpretation is correct. It asks something quieter and more uncomfortable. It asks what kind of horror lingers longest: external threats that can be fought, or internal ones that must be carried. In the end, the obelisk is not something you confront, but something that you remember.